Yeah, in the African context, especially from a women's perspective, I think the Christology that is operational is a functional Christology. I don't think we engage so much in the ontological perspective, but we identify with the Christ of the scriptures, the Christ who is described as one who is concerned with the suffering, the one who is a healer, a friend, and the one who takes the burdens of the people in our context, because the African context is one of a very exuberant Christianity, a thriving spirituality, but also a context that is characterized by suffering in terms of debilitating diseases like HIV and AIDS, malaria. Now we even have non-communicable diseases like cancers, hypertension. They are growing. And also issues of governance. Many countries do not have very good leadership. And so the economy is also affected by bad governance. And so rising levels of poverty are also there. So the Christology that appeals to us is the one that helps people not only cope with the situation, but also know that Christ is a personal companion who is there for them and who enables them to live within this context and to transcend the vicissitudes of life. Yeah. I think the development of African theologians has been an ongoing exercise in the last 40 years. It's only that some countries are at different levels. But I think the Catholic Church in East Africa has a vibrant academic environment. For example, I belong to an association we call Ecumenical Symposium of East African Theologians. And these are theologians from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. Sometimes we invite scholars from other parts of Africa or other parts of the world. And we meet every year, the weekend before Palm Sunday. And we develop themes every year that we speak to and write about. And so we have generated a lot of literature. I think the problem is that there is a disconnect between what the academic theologians are doing and the application of that theology in the church. So there is also, of course, the issue of the church leadership, the hierarchy, and so it is slow in responding to the issues, to the theology that has been emerging, either from the grassroots or from the academy. So, but it is also true that most theologians, because of being formed and educated in the West, they still tend to use Western categories, even for Christologies. Like the most famous pioneer of Christology in Eastern Africa is Charles Nyamiti, but he uses Thomistic concepts for describing Christologies in Africa. Although he uses the concept of Christ as ancestor, but it's still very unrelated in a general way, in specific ways to the ancestor concept in African religion and culture. So I think there needs to be a process where the church as leadership and the theology and what is happening on the ground, that the theology that emerges from the ground informs, not academic theology informs what is happening in terms of church policy and in terms of ministries and practice. Yeah. Yes, because I think we start from the premise that theology is about life, that a theology that does not speak to a particular context, to issues in life, economic issues, social issues, political issues, family issues, is not relevant. in Africa because we want answers to the problems and the questions that we are asking within our context, our social life, our family life, structures of governance, even religious structures, legal structures, everything. Yeah. Yeah, the initial theological endeavor was what is called, described as inculturation theology. So there are two trajectories in African Christian theology: inculturation theology and liberation theology. So the scholars, the pioneer scholars or theologians focused on inculturation, and that was an attempt to see how the gospel is incarnated within the African socio-economic, political, and cultural context. So they focused a lot on culture, seeing what is what can be used in African Christianity or in African theology to communicate the gospel. So they looked for parallels, like issues of values, of community, solidarity, justice, love, mutual responsibility. And so they saw, so whatever was congruent with the gospel from our culture was accepted. And whatever was regarded as maybe retrogressive or not useful or not life-affirming was discarded. You know, they proposed the discarding of such concepts or such practices. So it focused a lot on that, the culture perspective. But there is also the other aspect, which was also of liberation, which was also informed by what was going on worldwide in the two third worlds, and especially the theology that evolved from the Ecumenical Association of Third World Theologians. So the issues that Latin Americans were speaking to, also Africans picked them up, because the 70s and the 80s, for example, were periods where there were military dictatorships in many countries in Africa, and poverty levels were rising. There was bad governance, abuse of human rights, single-party rule. And so theologians addressed these issues. So I would say those are the two trajectories that have been there. So African religion was seen as a basis of doing theology as part of the context. Yeah.